What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and today we have the world famous Richard Holdener on here joining us. You guys know him from his YouTube channel, his self-named YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it already, we will post a link later on. Actually, we'll post a lot of links throughout this chat. And then, of course, you've probably seen him on the Motor Trend app out there with Freiberger doing some work every once in a while. So everybody give a big Goat Rope Garage welcome to the man, the myth, the legend, Richard Holdener. Richard, how are you doing today?
Good. How's it going? I think you're overselling it a bit.
Nah, not at all, man. I tell you what, you're out there doing all the legwork, doing some of the most amazing tests on the dyno out there, and I know everybody appreciates it. There's just so many people blowing up in the chat room right now telling you hi and that they love your material. And I've got a question to start off. Oh, yeah, are we going to toast tonight?
There you go.
I've got a super juicy over here, so cheers. Everybody have a cold beer if you're of legal age. So I've got to ask you, because I got to get it out of the way right off the bat, if you were to have to pick one engine platform that you had to work with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I don't think I could do that. I really do love, you know, and I know that it's hard for guys to understand, but because the guys that I talk to about Ford 5 liters or about small block Chevys or about LSs or RBs or rotaries or whatever it is, they're all fanatical about it. And the one thing that I don't like is that if I can understand, like, I want a guy to really love what he's doing. I want him to love his engine, but I also want him to understand that any love he has for that, another guy shares for another engine.
Right.
And that doesn't make them enemies, man. That should make them friends. They should be able to understand that, hey, I love this one and that's for me, and you love that one and that one's for you. And we should be boys, and we should, you know, we're still going to talk trash and race every time we, you know, every chance we can. But that's something that all the automotive guys share.
That's exactly right. And I go through the same thing. I'm generally a GM guy nowadays, but I've had rotaries, I've had Subarus, I've had a little bit of everything. Thanks, Eric Simpson, for the donation saying Richard Holdener for president. Any chances you're going to run for 2020?
Man, I don't think I can screw things up.
Okay, so I haven't checked out your newest video where you throw all the intakes on the LS. Can you give us a little insight as to which one was the best?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a cool story about that intake video, because that thing was done a long time ago. It was done as a story for Hot Rod Magazine. And what I did was open my big mouth and say, hey, you know, instead of just doing one or two intakes, let's test them all. And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. You need to go do that. So I'm like, oh, great. Now I actually have to go do it. So, but I did put them all together. And the reason that I ended up doing a video on this is because far and away, that is the #1 story that I grab a link to and provide the link for people. Because they always ask about, hey, what does this intake do? What does this intake do? And what does this intake do? And so I just go over and I copy that link and I post it and I give it to them. I'm like, look, any question that you have about intakes on an LS, it's all right here. So if it's a long run one, it does this. If it's a short run one, it does this. So I had to get that video out there too, so guys would understand that I don't, and this way, hopefully, I don't have to keep going to that link and giving it to people.
Right. Right. Well, I just picked up a high ram for the truck myself, so hopefully it did pretty good on there.
Yeah, the high ram's a good intake, but like, and I'll cover that in the video too, but the high ram's a good intake, but it's good for a specific RPM range. It's a short runner. It wants to run up top. It's not going to make the power that a Fast or a Trailblazer SS does below 6,500. If you want to rev it, that works good. If you don't want to rev it, you know, in the 6,500 RPM range, there might be better choices, but I show you all that stuff in the video.
Good to know. Good to know. So I've got a couple questions coming in here. One of them, have you done a Y pipe versus X pipe versus true duals?
I don't think I've done that on the engine dyno. Part of the reason is because when we run it on the engine dyno, it's hard to fit some of that stuff. Now I have done full exhaust tests versus normally the way that we run it, we'll run it with headers and then a collector extension, an 18 or 20 inch collector extension on the header, because that helps with torque a lot. Sometimes we run mufflers on it. Lately, I've been running mufflers just because it's so noisy. But I've compared that exhaust to a full exhaust. And like I said, one of the problems with running the exhaust is the way that the dyno is configured. It's hard to get from stock exhaust manifolds or the headers right past the dyno where the H pipe or the X pipe would be. Once we get past that part of that problematic part, then the rest of the catback exhaust is actually easy.
Right.
But that important part that's connected right to the exhaust, it makes it difficult for testing on the engine dyno.
Gotcha. So if you were to have to say, out of all of your testing, if you were to pick one particular setup that was your favorite so far, and I know that's a hard question because you've done so much, what's been one of your favorite setups that you've tested on the dyno?
Well, I think that there are two things that come to mind. The first one is I love intake manifold testing. Like I love induction theory, and that's one of the reasons I did that big intake shootout. But if you go back through this, and I'll be posting a lot of these videos up, and you see a little bit about that in the Hemi video where I changed the stack lengths on the runners and stuff. I love doing that. So I've made a lot of adjustable intake manifolds for a variety of engine families, and so I get on the dyno and I get to just start adding stack length. I mean, and we've gone all the way up to, we've gone over 20 inches in the stack length. Yeah, and so that sort of stuff is really, really cool. And I think that the other thing that comes to mind is the very first Big Bang Theory that I did. When I did it way back we actually did this test like back in 2010, and I did that for Hot Rod, and I did it for the same reason that I did similar testing for the Honda guys and for the Mod Motor guys and even the 5-liter Ford guys. Is because everybody says the same thing. Oh, that piston breaks at 8 pounds of boost, or that connecting rod or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? They really don't know what the boost is. So let's find out what really happens. So when we did that first Big Bang and we made all this power, I'm like, wow, this, and it surprised me a little bit too, honestly, how much power that thing made, because we were kind of trying to break it.
Right.
We were trying to break the power, and we just ran it up and up and up and up and up. And I'm like, this thing has to let go sometime. And it just never did. And that was pretty awesome.
Well, and you know, that kind of falls in line with a lot of the stuff that I preach from the tuning standpoint of it, is that, you know, it's not that stuff that kills it. Things like bad tunes, improper AFRs, that's what ends up killing engines. Cylinder temperature, you know, these are the things that you need to be aware of. And there's certain ways that you can get around these and properly do this stuff and give yourself a lot more leeway. It's not like it used to be back in the day, especially if you look in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, where guys were kind of just Wild West tuning a lot of these EFI engines and didn't know what they were doing and throwing boost at it. And so it's been really interesting seeing your aspect of it, because it's given me a lot of insight to some of the things that we could probably get away with if we take the right approach to make sure and manage the things that destroy engines.
Yeah, they're easy to break. We can break an NA engine by putting too much timing in it. We don't even have to have boost. We can break just about anything if you don't tune it proproperly.
Exactly.
I'll tell you a tuning horror story, and you won't believe this, but when I ran I have a 5-liter LX Mustang that I still have. I'm an original owner. I bought it in November of '97. Nice. And I ran it in the Silver State with the Vortec on it, and it had trick flow heads on it. And back then we didn't have tuning for it, so we had no chips, no nothing. So the way that we tuned it is I bought a Pro M meter for 36-pound injectors. We got 36-pound injectors, put those in, and then we normally ran an FMU on it. As a matter of fact, this was before I did the 36-pounders. I had 24-pound injectors in it and a 24-pound meter and an FMU, and I ran in the Silver State with this thing. And we ran it at wide open throttle for 32 minutes straight before I had to lift off and go through the narrows. Wow. So we were going fast. I mean, we were going 180 miles an hour, 185 miles an hour. But the thing is, with the FMU, my fuel pressure was at over 100 PSI. The gauge only went to 100. So I was running for 30 minutes with an FMU and 24-pound injectors, and all we did was move the distributor to tune it, and we ran like that for a half hour. I just can't believe some of the stuff that we got away with.
Oh, man, I tell you, and it's mind-blowing, just the technology that's out there nowadays, what they'll allow you to do. And you know, I dive into that stuff every day. I've got this might be a smart-ass comment, but somebody's asking if you're getting ready to do a cam test on boost.
Yeah, we're doing it's the sloppy stage 2 versus the world. So We're going to run all the stage 2 turbo cams. I'm going to run them NA and turbocharged just so that I can show people that stuff carries over. Oh, I think I lost my...
No.
There we go. Yeah, I lost my mic there.
There you go.
Yeah, so I just want to show them that it carries over.
So every cam is a boost cam, right?
That's it.
That well, I'm in the boat of looking at cams myself, and so I take that to heart that it's enlightening to see the curve move up almost exactly between an NA and a turbo, even on the what they would call the non-turbo cams. Just make the power and then add the boost. Well, and the nice thing about it, as you always point out, is you can make more power with less boost, and that's always the goal. The engine efficiency, the breathing efficiency, at the end of the day, it's just an air pump. We're doing our best to move air from point A to point B, and so.
And I like doing that. I like making more power on less boost because, it's easier on things. It's safer. We have more window for tuning and stuff. I just like doing that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm going on my current setup, which I've got an F1A sitting on a 5.3 liter Silverado, and so we got to start opening the engine up a little bit and get some more breathing air in there. She's a little choked off, but we're going to do some interesting things because it's the DI motor. We're getting ready to do auxiliary injection on it through the Holley high ram, and there you go. Mainly that's so we can run E85 on it,
Oh, nice. I like that blower. That's a good blower. That you should be able to make a lot of power. We did
it's 5.3. Sick.
Yeah, we did a 5.3 with an F1A, and it might have been an F1A 94, but it it easily did 1,000 horsepower, so it's not a problem.
I can believe it. I had a P1 SC1 before that at about 14 psi, and it was pretty scary. This thing comes on the boost so much quicker, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
So 5.3 11-to-1 pop-ups. Would he recommend TFS Gen X 215 or 225?
On a 5.3, I think I'd put 215s on it.
There you go. And I absolutely know nothing about cams, so I'll be probably reaching out to you to ask some questions later on whenever it comes time.
And I probably would not put a dome piston on that. I would run a flat top piston and then run a small chamber. It would be a better combination.
I'm going to try and run a little bit shorter on it too, so I can get my compression ratio down. I'm still at the factory 11.5-to-1, which is a little spooky.
Okay.
Let's see here. LM7 cam NA as a comparison to all stage 2 cams as a reference. That's not really a question so much. Oh, here's a good one. Do you hang out with David Freiberger a lot?
No, I don't. David's a really, really busy guy. So when he comes over to West Tech to do tuning or do testing, that's about the only time I get to see him. Or if he had, like I talk on the phone with him because sometimes he's got questions about LS stuff, and if I can help, obviously I'll help out, and I call him for stuff too. He's a good guy. That guy works hard.
Oh, I can believe it. I mean, probably not as hard as you. Every time I turn around, you got a new video out. How do you maintain that pace?
I'm trying to do it every day to help grow the thing because I've got a lot of tests that I've run that nobody's seen videos on. And, every time somebody asks, have you tested this? And I say, yes. I'm thinking, well, if you did do that, then you should have a video out on it.
I tell you what, if you grow any faster, man, we're going to lose sight of you. You've just been stratospheric. Everybody comments on my explosive growth in the last year, and then I come over here and I watch Richard's channel, and I'm thinking, man, this guy just doesn't stop. And so I'm totally impressed on your ability to keep up with it, because I know personally how time-consuming it is to go out, line everything up, get all the video production side of it done, make it presentable. So.
Yeah, this is fairly new to me because we just started back in December. So what I want, obviously, is like everybody, I want the production quality to get better, and I'll learn more stuff. And basically, I've been editing all this stuff on my phone. So, there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. I'd like to get somebody to partner with me and maybe help out with that, because doing all the testing and shooting everything and doing all the editing and everything, that it takes like every second of every day to get it.
It sure does. It sure does. So I've got a question. Who does your machine work?
We have a couple of places that we use when we do stuff at West Tech. I use Derek over at L&R, which they're in Santa Fe Springs, and also Dugan's over there is not too far away from West Tech. So they do really good stuff. and they're fairly close. So those are usually the guys that we use.
Rick asks, how many dynos does Westech have, and do you have to fight Steve for time?
Yeah, they have 2 engine dynos and 1 chassis dyno, and yeah, they're nice and try to work me in when they can. But yeah, we got to make sure that we schedule dyno time. It can get hard because it's a popular place, and they're very busy. They do a lot of work.
S10 says, Richard is a rock star. That's how he keeps up. It is truly appreciated. Thank you, S10.
Oh, great. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Brian says, just wanted to say a huge thanks for both of you for all the time and effort you guys put into the game of hot rodding. Well, thank you, Brian.
And the thing I have to say is I get guys that say thanks and all that stuff, and for me, I want to thank them because one of the reasons that I do these videos is it's not so I can stand up and talk in front of people and tell them information. Like I'm not a college professor. What I want is I want to say, hey, look, when I did this, here's what happened. Now I want you guys to tell me what happened when you did that too. I want this to be a community because I don't know everything. I want to learn stuff. I learn stuff new every day.
Every day.
And so you tell me, hey, look, when we did this big block, it did this thing. And I always want to hear crazy stories anyway. So if they've got good stuff to tell, I want them to share that with me. And this is a whole group learning experience.
That's exactly what I say from the get-go, that I am learning probably more from the guys that take the time to comment, give feedback, their experience. And on top of it, it opens up to a broader spectrum of guys that are doing things that I don't necessarily have access to go out there. And so I get exposed to different platforms to tune on, different engine and power adder combinations. And so it's been more beneficial. I keep on telling them it's been more beneficial to me than it probably has to them. And so I appreciate everybody participating. And it's a big family. That's all this is.
Yeah, and relatively speaking, car guys are a very small group of the big population, which is why I was stressing the fact that we all got to be together in this, man. A Coyote guy shouldn't be arguing with an LS guy because you guys are both car guys. I mean, the example I always use is, hey, if your favorite car is a 69 DZ 302 Camaro and mine is a 69 Boss 302, one's a Ford and one's a Chevy, and we're going to be natural enemies, the reality is those are the same cars.
Right.
I mean, they're both 5 liters. They're both 4 speeds. They both have the same track and wheelbase. They were designed for exactly the same thing. One's got a Ford badge. And if we came together and went to a big meet where they were celebrating 60s Trans Am cars, then we would be together. And that's the thing. And like I said, I don't want people to get it wrong. If I'm lined up at a light next to you, I'm going to do everything that I can to win. But after that race is over, I'm going to help you make your car faster because then I got to make my car faster.
Bingo.
And then everybody grows, the whole industry grows.
Exactly. So here's a good question. I would like to know what you run non-LS fuel injected stuff on the dyno like Fords. What PCM are you using? Holly? I normally, when I do my own tuning, because for a long time I wasn't doing it when I first started this, because I've been doing this almost 25 years now. But when it first started, I wasn't doing the tuning. We had the guys there at Westech doing it. And so I decided I couldn't wait for them to do the stuff that I wanted to do, mostly because I'm there until midnight or 1 o'clock and they don't want to stay there and do that. But I normally use either Fast or Holly because those are the ones I'm most fluent with. I never run a factory ECU there on anything. It's just so much faster to be able to tune with a Holly or Fast. Right. So are you just
if you have cylinder heads to change, it's hard to you got to do some fast.
Exactly. Are you just running like the Holly EFI setup then?
We run a Holly HP, and then we have different harnesses to hook up. Like we have a universal harness that we could hook up to a distributor for a Ford or Chevy or Dodge or anything, basically, if we want to run that setup. And then we have LS stuff and Coyote stuff and Hemi stuff or anything else.
Perfect. Here's one from Scott. Would you do the TrickFlow LS3 top end kit on a stock bottom LS2 with a Whipple 2.9?
Yes, although I don't think you need ported heads necessarily on that combination. If you want to spend the money, you can, but I think you could spend the money better by putting cam and springs and the blower on it, because I don't think that you're in a situation where, especially at that displacement, that the ported heads are going to help you a whole bunch.
Good answer. Man, and the fact that you can just pull that stuff right off the top of your head still blows my mind. Here we go. This is a good one. Charlie Joe says, recently started tuning my stuff thanks to Goat Rope. I feel confident in my first ever turbo install thanks to Richard. So thank you, Charlie.
Oh, cool. I can't how easy it is to add boost to stuff now. It's awesome.
Right. Michael Ingerly wants to know when the Hemi stuff is coming.
I have some Hemi videos up already, and I have a 5.7 there. I'm going to be doing some more stuff with it. I've got some other cams that we're going to run, and I have an Edelbrock top end setup with it. I've got some Edelbrock heads and Edelbrock intake, so that stuff's coming up too. We got some more Hemi testing, and he should buy my book. I have a whole book on Hemi testing. They need to read that.
There you go. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Richard's book on Hemi testing. Is it on Amazon? I take it.
Yeah, it's available there. It's through CarTech. It's the same people
Okay.
that did. Most people don't realize I've done 10 books on this kind of stuff, from Hondas and Focuses and B-Series Honda stuff and Ford 5-liter stuff, modular Ford LS stuff, obviously, as well.
Perfect. I'll have to check some of yours out. I'll just search your name out there. I like to do book reviews on this channel also.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll send you some stuff. You can talk about it.
Well, speaking of which, I need to send you some stuff. Hey, Richard, you should tune a GM interference motor to see the max it can take. That would be pretty sweet with a variable valve timing 2-liter turbo 4.
So what engine family is it?
The 2-liter 4-cylinder inline unit. It'd be like in the Cruise, maybe.
Okay, that's an Ecotech then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good motor. I like those motors.
Steven says, what is Richard's opinion on gapless rings and gas-ported rings versus regular compression rings? That's a good question.
I've run gapless rings. We tried some of that stuff when I was doing the Engine Masters Challenge competition, and I think that they work. And a lot of people don't realize that a gapless ring isn't really a gapless ring.
Right.
Because we tell people all the time you have to have ring gap, and a gapless ring overlaps, so it actually has the ability to expand. It just doesn't have any gap in it. So I like them. I think that they work. I don't think they're magic, but they do work. And gas porter rings also work, but a gas porter ring works best if you combine it with the other things that you need to make that work, like a vacuum pump is a good idea, that sort of thing.
Right. Let's see here. I'm just scrolling through the chat room here. Make sure I don't miss any good questions here.
What? No 1-liter Chevy Sprint turbo questions? Come on, I said some last year. That thing got over 50 miles to the gallon.
Dude, I tell you, everybody's just blown away because it's a spam of praise over here, as if I didn't inflate your ego enough.
We need questions.
So I have an LS. Here we go. Jonathan Scott, I have an LS1 with cam, motion, solid lift, 248, 258, 637, 625 lift. That's a lot. 110 LSA, Holley high ram, Molle forged flat tops with factory perimeter LS1 heads. With the 799s, 243s, or 862, 706 be worth swapping? Head swap question.
So what heads does he have on there now?
He has the factory perimeter LS1 heads on it now.
So that's like a 241 or something like that. The 799 would definitely be better than that, and like an LS3, an 823 or an 821 would definitely be better than that if he's got enough bore size.
Nice. KWB says, any chance you do an aftermarket VVT cam shootout?
I actually would love to do a VVT cam test because, when we run camshafts, at some point you trade power. So you pick up a lot at the top and you lose some down below. But with a VVT, we can get that middle part that's really good. So we can get a little bit more down low and a little more up top. I'd like to do that. Unfortunately, we have to run a factory ECU to be able to do that. And
maybe I can hook you guys up with a VVT controller that you could do that without the factory ECU. Would you guys be interested in doing that?
The limitation you have with the VVT stuff is you have a limited amount of piston to valve clearance. So you get to a point where you start adding camshaft to it, and it's problematic with the piston to valve.
Yeah, I'm running into that issue I've got a XLR with the North Star in it right now, and it's running on a Terminator X, so I don't have the VVT control on it, so it misses out a lot below 3,500 on that motor. And so I've been looking for some kind of unit that I can use for the VVT control, just looking at crank position, cam position, and basically where you can set up your, I guess your cam retard in just off an simple RPM table. Dirtfloor, who's my moderator, says, what do you think is the strongest stock bottom big block? Any brand, and what do you think would be the failure point with boost?
Well, I'm getting ready to run that Gen 6 big block with boost, and we've already gone over 1,200 with a junkyard Gen 6 454. So we know it will go there, and I honestly think it's going to go a lot more than that when we do it correctly. But I haven't tried a Ford. I haven't tried a Chrysler, like a 440, like from a motorhome. Although I just borrowed one from Dulcich and from Freiberger, and I'm going to go down to West Tech here just in the next day or so and put that up on the dyno. No, we're not going to do an all-in kind of thing, but we are going to put a turbo on it and probably make some boost with it, and just to show people, hey, look, if you have a motorhome or something like that, this is a good option, and it will do that. But so far, the two motors that I think that have a chance to dethrone the LS, one is possibly that Gen 6 454, and the other one is a Gen 2 Coyote. Mm-hmm. I have one of those we're putting together, and we're going to run all the boost on one of those because those things can make a lot of power. So it'll be interesting to find out if they're strong enough.
Right. So I've got to ask you, what is the last Gen big block? Is that a Gen 7, right? The 8.1?
Yeah, that's 8.1, yeah, the 496.
Is the 496 worth anything?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to test one of those. We're going to run one of those on the dyno and do some upgrades to it. And guys want me to try to do a big bang test on it. It'd be interesting to see if it has the strength. I think it might. The problem and the reason I haven't done anything with an 8.1 is they just don't have a lot of aftermarket support. It's got Raylar, Dart, done a few things, but that's just not really a big enough market, I think, for most guys to take a look at.
I haven't dug into it yet, but is there much part interchangeability between the 6 and the 7?
No.
Okay. Let's see here. That's too specific. When tuning for more turbo boost, is more cam overlap good or bad? Should the exhaust cam be more advanced or retarded around when boost hits?
That's kind of a vague question. I don't know what you mean by a lot or a little bit of overlap. What I do know is, and we talked about this earlier, is if you have a cam, a lot of people think that any overlap is bad on a turbo application. That's absolutely not true. If you have overlap in a cam and it makes power NA, it will work under boost. They tend to walk that back. Most turbo cams tend to walk that back a little bit. But if you're running a lot of RPM, and you need a camshaft that runs RPM, and you add boost to it, it's going to work pretty well. So I'd have to look at the exact specs that he's talking about to figure out whether or not that's a good idea.
Do you think it's just because whenever people start running overlap, they tend to lose boost pressure, that they get scared to overlap on running a cam on a turbo?
Well, I think that the overlap thing has a negative connotation because if we've read any books from the 70s and the 80s, it says you don't want to overlap, you want to run a stock cam. And here's what I want people to think about, and I hope that they're listening. Overlap cannot bleed boost out on a turbo application. And the reason that it can't is because you have more back pressure in the system than you have boost pressure. So the boost pressure can't bleed out of a system when it has more back pressure going against it. So it's much more common for the back pressure to bleed into the combustion chamber than it is for the boost to go out of it. So that's a common misconception, and it doesn't really happen. Also, this event is happening so fast that people are thinking about this in slow motion. They think that the valve is open and closed, and oh no, when they're overlapping, all that boost is going out. But it happens in, fractions of a second. So
right.
it doesn't really do that. It's like, we have, I remember doing some cranking compression and leak down testing, and we had cylinders that had a lot of what we would call a lot of leak down and less cranking compression. But when the thing runs, it runs fine because there's no time for that like leak down to get past the thing because it happens so fast.
Right.
So I've had stuff where, for instance, I was running one 302 Chevy, and because it had a big dome piston on it, we didn't index the plug. We knocked the porcelain and the tip off the plug, and it went in and rattled around and kind of destroyed the cylinder. So it had a bunch of big scratches in it, and all we did was take it apart. I ball honed it. We put a new plug in it. We ran it. And then after running it, I thought, oh, that actually ran pretty good. And then we took it apart and took it to the machine shop and had him fix it so the cylinder was perfect. And then we ran it again, and it didn't do anything.
Didn't make a difference.
I was so disappointed because it was terrible looking.
Overlap on a supercharger. Saw a giant ET spike till the cam swapped to less overlap. Same lift. Does that sound natural?
Well, see, here's the thing. On a supercharged combination, overlap might be more problematic than it is on a turbo, because overlap on a supercharged combination only has pressure on one side.
Right.
Then it probably would want to go out. So, but again, here's the thing. Whenever you run, and especially when guys run these really wide LSA cams, typically on a supercharged combination, at least on a positive displacement supercharged combination, like if you look at the LS9 cam or the LS7 cam, they really run a wide LSA. And what that does is kill power down low and makes power at the top. But if you put a camshaft in there that doesn't do that, the supercharger still likes it. So what it does to the NA combination, the supercharger will still do that under boost. And there may be a point where that stops happening, but nobody's been able to show me that point yet.
Nice. It's good information, especially for guys like me that are running superchargers. We've got a good question here. Can you talk about the effect of the LSA? I've read a lot of theory about the Buick GNX days where they were stuck at a limited lift duration and they ground the same numbers with 110 LSA.
I think as a general rule, if you guys tend to widen the LSA, if you widen the LSA, it tends to push power higher in the RPM range. And if you shorten the LSA, you make it tighter, it will bring power on down lower, like it'll add mid-range and can add, and when I say mid-range, it can add power all the way up to 6,500. That's why all of these super stock cams and stuff, guys that are using like in the limited drag racing, they usually have really tight LSA, and they may be all the way down to 100. But the problem is idle quality goes away and piston to valve clearance goes away also as you tighten up the LSA.
Good to know. Good to know. I am just adjusting the buffer here. We got a little bit of lag, so bear with me. We're stressing my machine. Everybody's telling me I need to tune my computer. I'm trying to get, there we go. That might help a little bit.
You need to put a booster pump on it.
Exactly. Well, I'll know for next time I'm going to have to invest in a bigger streaming computer whenever I get Richard on here, because I got so many people wanting to tune in and see what's going on here.
Those are all just family members.
I wish. Trust me, my family is about this big, but let me ask you this, though. So I am personally looking at running a big block in the near future, but being that I come from the land of electronic tuning and things like that, have you guys messed with any of the cam position distributor replacements for doing sequential spark?
Well, the factory Gen 6 is an EFI motor, so you can run that. It has a crank sensor, and then you can run the cam sensor off the distributor, obviously. So if you wanted to run sequential, you could. But what I'll tell you in the testing that I did with the LS, because when I ran the LS, we ran it as a batch fire, we ran it sequential, and then we ran it with individual cylinder tuning.
Right.
And the change in power was very minimal and not worth the extra time and effort that we had to put into it to do all of that. Now, there might be applications where it definitely is. Like if you were trying to maximize the fuel economy of a race car that you're running at Le Mans, and it meant the difference between saving a fuel stop and not, definitely you would do that stuff. But I think one of the problems is guys think that, oh, you know, he ran it in batch power, he doesn't know what he's doing. I would run it in sequential and we would make all this power. That's not going to happen.
No.
Because
no.
It's just not there. It's the same thing with things like whenever we talk to any of these fancy tuners, they always bring up injector timing and things like that. We're like, yeah, we don't do that normally when I do a cam test where I'm testing 30 cams. We don't go into that. But we have, and the reason that we don't do it is because when we do it, it's worth a handful of horsepower,
right,
if any. And so we just, it's just a lot of work to go into. And for something like Engine Masters, when I was doing that, we did everything that we could to try to find every last horsepower. But we can't do that on every dyno set, dyno session.
I ran into the same exact thing on that North Star going over to a standalone because it has a 8X cam sensor on it, and I couldn't get that thing to trigger properly. And so I ended up putting it on batch fire. I've had absolutely no issues with it. The thing runs like a scalded ape, but
yep.
Okay.
It's not a problem.
Right. Most sources say 4-inch minimum bore size for rectangle ports. Is it 5 thousandths over drum factory bore? Hold on, this question is way too long. I apologize.
Yes, if you're going to run rec port heads, do it on a 4-inch bore. If that's the question.
There you go, Jonathan. Sorry, man. I'm trying to pick the ones out that I can read across. Is there any downfall to running wasted spark ignition?
I've never done a direct back-to-back test on efficiency or anything like that you might pick up when you're doing that. So I wish I had an answer, but I really don't.
Yeah, a lot of motorcycles run that, and I don't think that they have any issues. So it's
no. I think the SHO Taurus, the old D6 ones were like that. I think, but I only have limited experience.
Right. Last time I worked on something that was wasted spark, it was a Volkswagen Vanagon.
Nice.
Not really. 243 heads worth it on an LQ9.
Yeah, if you're changing from a 317 head to a 243 head, that's definitely that's a good upgrade.
Nice.
It's not going to flow anymore, but it definitely will change the compression.
There you go. There you go. Let's see here. I'm sorry. I've got so much coming on here, and I'm just trying to pick out the best stuff for you, Richard.
That's all good. I could just talk endlessly about the Chevy Sprint Turbo, though.
Oh, here we go. Here's a good one, and thank you, Casey, for donating. Let's see. TBSS versus stock intake.
Yep. Versus a stock truck intake?
Yeah.
The TBSS is the best factory cathedral port intake that they ever made. So it's better than the truck, it's better than the LS6, it's better than the LS2, it's better than the LS1. And if you go watch the video that's up on my YouTube channel right now, you'll be able to see how they all compare because they're all there. Except for awesome. The LS2, I didn't have one of those.
Man, should have reached out to your subscribers. I'm sure you could have popped one up out of there somewhere.
I know, but I've tested the LS2 versus other stuff other times, and I know where it sits compared to like an LS6, for instance. So it's not a contender against the Trailblazer. And I tested all the Dorman intakes too, which I need to do a video on that. That's good stuff too.
Just hard to beat that Trailblazer intake.
Yeah,
that manifold's pretty crazy.
The Dorman LS2 is the equivalent of the Trailblazer SS, but it fits under the hood, so it's a real nice combination. That's the one that everybody says is some sort of hybrid between the early Fast and the LS2, and there's all this mythology going on behind it, but it does work well.
Here's a good question. In your opinion, what would be more important, lift or duration when it comes to choosing a cam in a supercharged application?
Duration makes much more of a difference in what the cam does than what the lift does. If you take a look at, these guys may not know, but if you go back and look at the old Duntoff cams from the small block Chevys, they all ran fairly low lift. And the way that they made them more of a performance cam is they just started adding duration. I mean, those things had over 250 degrees at 50, and that's a lot for a factory.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so yeah, duration makes much more of a difference than lift. You can go from a 550 lift to a 600 lift cam and change power very little. But if you go from a 220 to a 230 cam, it's going to change the power.
You want to see it there, yeah. So, and this is a theoretical question, what is the maximum horsepower you'd recommend running on a stock bottom end LS3 on 93 octane?
Yeah, there's no way to answer that. I don't know what the detonation threshold is of that combination. Whenever we run stuff on the dyno, we always run it with good gas because we want to show whatever the change that we're doing is, not the limitation of whatever the fuel is. Right. And honestly, it scares the hell out of me to run boost on pump gas anyways. The guys that are doing it out on the street in the tuners and stuff, I salute all of you guys doing it because it honestly, like I said, it scares the hell out of me. And part of the reason is because the way that a dyno loads, like the initial load is always the problem because it produces a stationary load that you can't duplicate anywhere else. Because you're never loaded at 3,000 RPM
right.
at wide open throttle, just lugging somewhere, that doesn't happen. But, I think your tuner is probably going to be able to tell you that better.
Right. Well, and the guys running 93 also run snow performance methanol injection if they're smart.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I got to plug my sponsor real quick.
Oh, come here. Can you let Milo out?
So what's your thoughts on E85?
I love it. I think it's the best thing ever invented. Partly because if you take a look at the price of race fuel, if you go buy race fuel, it can be 10 or 20 bucks a gallon, which is, if you want to protect your motor, you got to do that. But I can go to a pump now and get E85 and it's, $2.50 a gallon instead of $3.50 a gallon, or now it's $1.50 a gallon instead of $2.50 because prices have come down. But it's so cheap and it adds cooling. It's got enough octane. You can do a lot of stuff on it that you couldn't do on either pump gas or you didn't want to spend the money for race gas.
Yeah, it's really a shame that it started rolling out there for a while and it seemed like it was going to be everywhere and they kind of contracted back on that. Now it's kind of hard to find it now. Let's see here. Do you have any experience with mechanical injection? How does properly tuned mechanical injection compared to EFI?
I haven't done a lot of mechanical injection, but I've been there a lot when Steve from West Tech has done it. He's got a lot of experience with mechanical injection, both small blocks and big blocks. And there are some Bonneville guys that come out there and run it because they have to run it for their vintage class. And it works fairly well. What the motor does in terms of power is a function of the intake design. And then the fuel, obviously, you have to get the right amount of fuel to it. The limitation with mechanical injection is it won't ever do what electronic fuel injection does because you can almost never get it right at every load and RPM point. You get really good at wide open throttle from 4,500 to 6,500, but it doesn't idle very well and doesn't take throttle. Or you could get the other part of it. Sometimes guys can get a pretty good mixture, but you can never do what you can do with electronic fuel injection because you can do what you want everywhere with electronic fuel injection, which is nice.
Exactly. Well, listen, we're coming up on 8:45, Richard. I know you're a busy man. I want to take a minute to thank you once again for swinging by this live show, and we would love to have you back in the future if you'd be willing.
Anytime.
And I tell you what, next time I will get a computer that doesn't try and melt down because I can tell you the temperature in my office has gone up like, pushing 16 pounds of boost on a stock LS2. So
get some super cooling in there.
Exactly. Something has to happen before too long. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Once again, let's go ahead. Zeth, if you could do me a favor, throw a link to Richard's YouTube channel in the chat room for everybody. I guarantee you 99% of the people are already subscribers in here. So unfortunately, this benefits me more than it benefits you. But if there's somebody that does not know who you are, we're going to make sure that they do before this is all said and done. And you can also find Richard by going to our YouTube homepage at tuning101.com. He's on the right-hand side at Friends of the Garage. So make sure and drop him a subscription if you haven't. make sure and drop him a like for all of his videos. That way they get more exposure out there. There's the link. Thank you. And Richard, I salute you. Keep doing your great work, brother. We're all excited to see what you're doing next. And man, really, thank you for stopping by the garage.
Hey, happy to, man. Got lots of tests coming. Thanks to all the guys who are out there supporting us. Good job, guys.
If you have anything else that you want to pitch while you're on here, feel free, man.
Yeah, you know, I'm not really into pitching that. I got a lot of guys that are asking me to do shirts and all kinds of stuff, and I haven't jumped into any of that stuff. I'm hesitant. They're kind of yelling at me to do it, and maybe I'll have to. I haven't yet, but maybe that's coming.
Yeah, if you need any tips, you shoot me an email, man. I've gone through the steps, and I'd be more than willing to help you out on that stuff. But once again, thank you, Richard, and thank you everybody that joined our live chat tonight with the myth, the man, the legend, Mr. Dyno himself, Richard Holdener.
Thanks, guys.